It was a chilly Thursday evening when I found myself perched uncomfortably on the toilet, trousers bunched around my ankles, while the echoes of mockery filled the air. The amusement of the crowd was palpable, particularly over the fact that I was cluelessly out of the loop. How was it possible for a man to be oblivious to his wife's infidelity, happening right beneath his very nose? Mark Davidson, boasting about his affair with my wife, was vividly recounting to his pal, Rick Stevens, the tale of how he charmed her at a soiree just the other week. This was the same event during which I was summoned to look into a burglary at a nearby museum. My absence lasted merely a couple of hours, yet I returned before nightfall. Upon my return, I discovered my wife mingling at a table with 3 others, including Mark Davidson. Accompanying them was his supervisor and the supervisor's spouse. My name is Jack Marshall, and I serve as a claims investigator for a globally recognized insurance firm specializing in coverage for high-value assets. The name of my wife might not ring a bell since we cater to an exceptionally niche market. Fresh out of university, I embarked on this career and have dedicated over 15 years to it. Now at 37, I'm at the zenith of my career. My role involves probing the details of incidents potentially leading to significant claims. While my duties often revolve around mundane cases, there are moments filled with thrill. My investigations mainly concern thefts and burglaries, though I occasionally delve into car mishaps involving several of our insured vehicles. My expertise in this field is well acknowledged, and I command a premium for my services when outsourced to other firms. Travel is part of the job, yet it's usually short-lived. For extensive inquiries, I have a team ready to maintain presence on site and ensure thorough investigation. My wife, Laura, and I have been together for 14 years, blessed with 2 wonderful kids, Emily, 10, and Sarah, 8. Laura, a year my senior, is also employed at the same firm, serving as an assistant to Henry Adams, the president of the company. Our paths crossed, and we united in marriage prior to her joining the firm. Following her job loss, I encouraged her to apply within my company. However, we needed to clear this with HR due to anti-nepotism policies. Given my standing within the company, they consented to her employment. Luckily, Henry Adams was in search of a new assistant. With over 5 years of experience as a personal assistant within a major conglomerate, Laura was an ideal candidate. Adams interviewed her and was immediately impressed. She was hired as his executive assistant. Colin Wilson and Ben Kramer, the 2 individuals I previously mentioned, were insurance experts who crafted policies for corporations or individuals possessing exceptionally valuable assets. To me, they were mere acquaintances rather than friends. Both were employed under Jerry Scoggins, a respectable individual and a close friend of mine. My direct supervisor was Bill Quinn, and I primarily worked solo, though Jerry occasionally provided me with intriguing tasks. The discussion I accidentally eavesdropped on occurred a week post the soiree. Seeking a moment of solace, I retreated to the restroom and spent some time there, grappling with discomfort and perspiration. The cause was likely the scallops I consumed the previous day, suspecting they were slightly off. As I lamented my misfortune, Colleen and Ben entered, seemingly oblivious to the occupied stall, and started discussing the event. It was then that Colin began to boast to Ben about his recent escapade. Amidst growing intestinal agony, unrelated to my dietary mishap, I tuned into their conversation. "How did you manage that with her?" "I didn't peg her for the type," Ben inquired, eager for details, given his absence at the event. "A few dances, and she seemed quite amicable. Though Brian was there, she only offered a smile when I suggested visiting my office, hinting Brian wouldn't approve," Colin shared. And then, Ben pressed, curious about the progression. "I convinced her to grab a drink with me at the bar while Brian was occupied with Judy, his assistant. I ordered a double for myself and discreetly swapped our drinks while she was engaged in another conversation. That part was easy. I just aimed to slightly inebriate her for a chance to get closer on the dance floor," Colin admitted, revealing his strategy. "But Brian was still around. What could you actually accomplish?" Ben wondered, skeptical of Colin's intentions. "No, I didn't orchestrate his departure. It was sheer coincidence. He approached her during a brief dance to inform her of his temporary leave. Though she initially wished to leave with him, he encouraged her to stay and enjoy herself, confident in his quick return. Reluctantly, she agreed and joined me, Jerry, and his wife, Colin recounted, leading up to the climax of his tale. So what transpired after that? Get to the juicy details, Ben urged, anxious to hear the conclusion. After Brian departed, I seized the opportunity to order her another drink, instructing Joe to mix it strong once more, and she was none the wiser. We shared a few slow dances, and by that time she was visibly tipsy, leaning heavily on me. During our dance, she occasionally brushed against me in a way that was unmistakably flirtatious, laughing softly each time. I sensed that she was just a drink away from losing her inhibitions entirely, so I got her another, which she downed with surprising ease, her behavior becoming more uninhibited by the minute. Indeed, I continued, after another strong drink, she started feeling dizzy. I suggested we step outside for some fresh air, and she agreed without hesitation. We made our way to my car, and once we were seated in the back, it was clear she was barely holding on. As I made a bold move, she didn't resist. In fact, she seemed to welcome it, urging me on. The narrative then took a turn towards the planned future encounter. I'm telling you, it's all set for next Saturday. She's supposed to be getting her hair done, but instead she's meeting me. We've planned to spend the day together at a hotel. Just wait and see. Ben's envy was palpable. Man, I've always thought Allison was attractive. It's hard to imagine what she saw in Brian to begin with. Maybe once you're done, you could introduce me. We'll see about that, but let's keep this between us for now. I don't want any slip-ups, Colin insisted, emphasizing the need for discretion. Emerging from the restroom, I was reeling, my stomach in knots from both the physical and emotional turmoil. The shock of overhearing such a conversation was overwhelming. Reflecting on the night of the party, I recalled how normal everything had seemed upon my return. Allison had been chatting casually, showing no signs of inebriation. Colin's swift departure after a brief conversation, Allison's whispered words to him. It all seemed innocuous at the time. The intimacy with Allison upon returning home that night now tormented me with new suspicions. Was it a sign of guilt, or simply a spontaneous expression of affection? Despite the week that had passed, Allison's demeanor remained unchanged, her recounting of the night vague and uneventful. The mention of her plans for the upcoming Saturday, coinciding with the details Colin had boasted about, struck a nerve. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture I couldn't ignore. Was this mere coincidence or evidence of a deceitful plan? As I contemplated confronting the situation, the reality of the circumstances weighed heavily on me, prompting a decision to observe more closely, questioning the trust I had placed in those around me. I'm familiar with Jerry's circle, but I'm not too acquainted with Ben or his spouse. I mentioned casually, same here, Allison replied. Then, shifting the topic slightly, I asked, what about Colin Wilson? You interacted with him during the party, right? Maybe he'd be interested in joining as well. Allison gave me a peculiar look, pausing before she responded. Why would you want to include him? No offense, but the guy's a bit of a jerk. I had to dance with him a few times at the party, and honestly, he gave me the creeps. Now, I was puzzled. Was Allison trying to steer me away from inviting Colin? Or was she attempting to assure me of her disinterest in him? Either explanation seemed out of character for her to speak so negatively about someone. Admitting my limited knowledge about Colin, I added, well, he's friends with Ben, and they appear to be quite close. Maybe inviting him isn't such a great idea after all. I think I'll just reach out to Phil and Charlie instead. They're always keen to have me along. That's a wiser choice. Best keep your distance from Colin. It's not worth getting involved with him, she advised. Dropping the subject, I shifted the conversation towards our weekend plans. So, you're okay with me playing golf then? I don't mind, since I'll be out anyway. How about we have dinner at Cypress Inn later? I'll be looking fresh from the salon, and you can unwind after golf. It'll be a lovely evening out, just the two of us. I can even ask my parents to watch Chrissy and Jen. Agreeing to her proposal, we decided to meet back at home by 5:30 p.m. on Saturday to prepare for our dinner out. If only I had been more observant, I might have gathered all the evidence needed for a decisive action that very day. Imagining the irony of confronting her with the truth over dinner at one of the city's finest spots had a certain appeal. The following day, I ventured to the security room at work to procure equipment for surveilling my wife and her alleged lover. Opting for one of the company's surveillance vans, I planned to park it in the company lot until Saturday. I equipped myself with 2 small transmitters for her purse and car, along with a compact GPS device for her vehicle, ensuring I could track her movements precisely. Though the van was equipped for video surveillance, filming them at a motel was out of the question. I contemplated hiding a camera in her jacket, yet it was a gamble, dependent on whether she chose to wear it. Despite the uncertainty, the GPS would allow me to tail her discreetly. This van was a marvel of modern surveillance, integrated with local street maps to pinpoint addresses within a 30-meter accuracy, capable of recording conversations through the audio transmitters. All these functions could operate autonomously, sparing me the need to be present in the van. Resolved to spend the week in observation, my expertise in surveillance lent me a professional edge. Despite keeping a closer eye on Ben and Colin, nothing out of the ordinary surfaced. My visits to Allison became more frequent, yet yielded no cause for suspicion. However, I planned to probe Ben further under the guise of discussing work-related matters, specifically a risk analysis for a large factory complex he was overseeing. When I approached him with the pretext of reviewing the Baxter plant plans, his initial distraction quickly gave way to indifference, signaling perhaps a deeper preoccupation, or simply the mundane reality of our day-to-day work. "Sure, I'm available. I actually have to head back there myself to snap some photos. When do you want to head out?" I offered. "How about in an hour?" he suggested. "Perfect. I'll swing by your desk on my way out," I confirmed, then exchanged a few more pleasantries before departing. Glancing back just as I rounded the corner, I caught a fleeting exchange of smirks between Ben and Colin. Their gazes followed me until I was out of sight. Interesting. Jerks, I thought, resolving that Ben would regret his part in this. True to plan, Ben joined me an hour later, and we set off in my SUV. Secretly, I placed one of the small transmitters in the console, hoping to capture any revealing dialogue between us. As we left, I broached the subject of last week's party. "So, Ben, did you have fun at the party last week?" I inquired, knowing full well he hadn't been there. "I missed it. Brian was out of town," he replied, unaware of where I was steering the conversation. "Missed out, huh? Like missing how Colin messed around with my wife?" The directness caught Ben off guard, his reaction a mix of shock and discomfort. "How did you? I mean, Colin told me, but I didn't know if," he stammered, struggling to compose himself. "Do you believe he'd lie about such a thing? What else did he mention? Any plans for another meeting?" I pressed, testing his loyalty and gathering information. Ben hesitantly mentioned their plans for Saturday under the guise of her getting her hair done, confirming my worst suspicions. Feigning gratitude for his honesty, I sarcastically thanked him, highlighting his hypocrisy and disloyalty. I made it clear that his silence on the matter would be in his best interest, threatening consequences if he failed to comply or if any word of our conversation reached Colin. The rest of the drive passed in silence, each of us absorbed in our tasks. I had the evidence I needed, and Ben, for now, was left in the dark about my full intentions. The week dragged on, filled with tension and surveillance. By Wednesday evening, with the kids away, Allison initiated an intimate moment. Despite my turmoil and anger, I couldn't resist the physical attraction and the tender connection we shared. It was a moment of pure love and desire, momentarily pushing aside my doubts and fears about our future. Afterwards, basking in the afterglow, Allison mused on the need for us to reconnect more often, hinting at a dissonance that had crept into our relationship. "Let's make sure this doesn't happen again," I suggested firmly. "Fine, I'll definitely work on it," Allison agreed. "How much time do we have?" "Do we have a minute for a quick shower?" she inquired. "I have to pick up the kids after 9, but we can delay that if you'd like, or we can wait until our date on Saturday night. I can ask the kids to stay with their mother for the night," I proposed. "That works," I have my hair appointment on Saturday, and you have golf. Then we have our dinner date, and after that, I'm all yours, she teased. Sounds like a plan. Anything else happening on Saturday? I asked. Nope, just our date. You better be prepared to make up for lost time, she joked. No better offer on my end, I replied with a smile. With that settled, Allison quickly dressed and left to fetch the children, leaving me to dwell on what had transpired. How could she make love to me like that if she'd been with Colin? Something didn't add up, and I intended to find out on Saturday. While she was gone, I tested the transmitters and ensured they were functioning properly. I planned to install them in her car and Percy on Friday night, leaving nothing to chance. But before that, I needed to meet with Ben again. I had to know which motel Colin had booked. The following morning, I arranged to meet Ben in the cafeteria. After briefing him on the task, I discreetly tucked a transmitter into his jacket, ensuring our conversation would be monitored. Ben, visibly apprehensive, agreed to help, fearing the consequences of refusal. Back in my office, I tuned into their conversation. Ben confronted Colin, demanding details of their rendezvous. Colin, initially defensive, eventually revealed the reservation at Skyview Motel on Statler Street. With this crucial information secured, I shut off the receiver, satisfied with the progress. Now armed with the motel's address, I could set up the surveillance equipment in the van and let it run autonomously. I wouldn't need to be physically present to witness the painful truth unfolding. All that was left was to wait until Friday evening. However, a thought struck me. What if I could capture them entering the motel room? Determined to explore this possibility, I headed to the Skyview Motel, ready to devise a plan. As I entered the motel office, I waited patiently for the clerk to assist me. He was a shady character, but that worked in my favor. Right now, honesty wasn't a priority. Hello there, my friend. I'm an investigator for an insurance company, and I need some information. Here's my ID and a warrant, I said, flashing my badge and handing him a convincing-looking document, which was actually a clever forgery designed to deceive the unsuspecting. Slipping $100 bill into his hand sweetened the deal. Can you confirm Colin Wilson's reservation and provide a room number? I inquired. Initially hesitant, he eventually divulged a room number after a little coaxing, aided by an additional $50 discreetly passed to him. I informed him about the surveillance van that would be stationed on the property, to which he nonchalantly shrugged, unfazed by the arrangement. Expressing my gratitude, I slipped him another $50 for his discretion, to which he grinned devilishly, pocketing the bills. With the necessary information secured, I could now position the camera through the van's front window to capture the footage I needed. Prepared and packed, Friday at work felt interminable. Unsure of how to occupy myself, I decided to pay a visit to Bill Quinn's office, ostensibly to discuss a recent art gallery robbery. Spotting my wife, Allison, her face lit up, and we exchanged greetings. After a brief chat, I entered Bill's office, engaging in small talk before broaching the topic of Colin Wilson. Bill, a young but astute president, was receptive to my inquiry, and I requested his candid opinion about Colin's performance. Satisfied with his response, I departed, catching up with Allison briefly before approaching Ben. Ostensibly discussing Baxter's performance, I subtly acknowledged Ben's conversation with Colleen, leaving him momentarily flustered but compliant. Wrapping up the day without incident, I waited for Allison before heading home. Explaining that I needed to tend to the surveillance van, I bid her farewell and proceeded to the motel. Positioning the camera as instructed by the clerk, I ensured it was trained on the designated room before locking it in place. Satisfying the motel owner with a token sum for his cooperation, I left for home. Friday night at home brought a pleasant surprise as Allison arranged for the kids to stay with their grandmother, keen to continue the romantic evening we had shared earlier in the week. Despite my lingering suspicions, I couldn't deny the enjoyment of the moment, even if the source of her newfound knowledge raised questions. I endeavored to fulfill every desire she expressed, and I managed to do so. It consumed most of the night, but I was determined. I had promised myself to take some Viagra for added stamina, As we lay side by side afterwards, I mustered the courage to inquire about the sudden surge of passion. Allison, I'm enjoying what we're doing, but I have to ask, where is all this coming from? Why now? I ventured cautiously. Her response caught me off guard. Sorry, honey. Naomi told me something last week that I can't repeat. But thinking about us and our life together just fills me with so much happiness that I can't help but express it, she explained earnestly. Despite feeling reassured by her words, a nagging doubt lingered. Are you sure I make you happy enough? Are you satisfied with our lovemaking, or is there something missing? I probed further, seeking honesty. I love the way we make love, and you've always satisfied me in every way. But I just don't want us to fall into a rut where things become routine and lose their spark. Can't you see that? Don't you want me to always desire you? She countered, her concern palpable. Assured of her affection, we spent the rest of the night entwined, awakening in each other's embrace the next morning. Eager for another round, I coaxed Allison into the shower, where we indulged in each other once more. Afterwards, we dressed and prepared for the day. I then made my way to the motel, ensuring all surveillance equipment was set up and operational, scheduling recordings to capture the entire day's events. Satisfied with my preparations, I drove home to begin my day, although it quickly turned sour during a lackluster round of golf. By late afternoon, I returned to the van to check on things, finding no signs of activity. I called home to let Allison know I was on my way, delaying my review of the day's recordings. Despite my turmoil, I decided to savor the evening with Allison before confronting the truth. As I drove home, conflicting thoughts plagued my mind. Could I forgive her infidelity if the evidence proved true? Could we salvage our marriage for the sake of our children? These questions tormented me as I prepared to face Allison. Yet, a small voice of doubt persisted, urging me to reconsider the evidence I had collected. At home, Allison greeted me, already showered and dressed. With a heavy heart, I joined her in getting ready, mustering the facade of normalcy for our evening out. Despite my inner turmoil, Allison's charming demeanor at dinner momentarily distracted me from my suspicions. Yet the dissonance of her recent infidelity lingered, casting a shadow over our interactions. As we drove home, Allison's affectionate gestures stirred conflicting emotions within me. I grappled with the juxtaposition of her adulterous actions and her affection towards me. Once home, Allison's suggestive invitation reignited my internal conflict. Should I confront her, or could I find a way to reconcile our fractured relationship? You owe me a little something, remember? A down payment just isn't enough, she teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief as she led the way upstairs to the bedroom. With a sense of anticipation, I stripped down to my boxers and socks while Allison removed her top and bra, leaving only a single strand of pearls adorning her neck. As she reached to remove them, I gently halted her hand. "Leave them," I whispered, admiring her beauty bathed in the soft glow of the pearls. "You look stunning just as you are. This moment is ours alone. I'm entirely yours tonight, to do with as you please. Let this be the start of something special for us," I expressed, my voice filled with sincerity. "Are you sure? Is this truly what you want?" she asked, her gaze searching mine for reassurance. "I trust you completely. I love you with all my heart," I affirmed, feeling a wave of conviction wash over me. In that moment, her words resonated with truth, and I resolved to set aside any doubts until the next day. Tonight, I would love her wholeheartedly. That night, we explored new realms of intimacy, discovering pleasures we never knew existed. Laughter mingled with passion as we delved into each other's fantasies, creating a magical experience unlike any other. Entwined in each other's arms, we surrendered to blissful slumber, waking late into the morning for an encore of our nocturnal escapades. As Allison prepared to fetch the girls on Sunday, I seized the opportunity to retrieve the surveillance tapes from the van, eager to uncover the truth. With the evidence in hand, I drove home, my heart pounding with trepidation as I prepared to confront reality. Reviewing the footage confirmed my worst fears, but I resolved to handle the situation with composure. Upon returning home, I immediately contacted Bill Quinn, arranging a discreet meeting to discuss the damning evidence. Overwhelmed by disbelief and anger, Bill initially balked at the revelation, but as he watched the incriminating footage, his demeanor shifted to one of resignation. We agreed that swift action was necessary, and I entrusted him with the task of terminating Allison and her accomplice, Colin, by Monday afternoon. With a heavy heart, I bid farewell to Bill, his words of gratitude providing some solace amidst the turmoil. Returning home, I maintained a facade of normalcy, concealing the impending upheaval from my family until the following day. Despite the impending storm, I found a glimmer of peace in knowing that justice would soon be served. We were utterly exhausted from the events of the previous nights, and as we retired early, sleep was all we desired. However, Allison yearned for a comforting embrace, and I gladly obliged. We drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, much like the night before. Monday brought a flurry of activity at work. Around 9:30, Allison called me, eager to unravel the morning's tumultuous events. Feigning ignorance, I prodded for details. She relayed that Bill had summoned both Ben Kramer and Colin Wilson to his office, where chaos ensued. Another call came 20 minutes later, informing me of security's involvement and the eventual dismissal of Ben and Colin for breaching the morals clause. Allison was buzzing with excitement, eager to discuss over lunch, to which I agreed. Over our meal, Allison recounted the morning's events with fervor. Ben and Colin's abrupt exit from the premises left a lasting impression, and Allison was elated by the unprecedented turn of events. She demanded my company, and I obliged. As we delved into the discussion, I felt compelled to reveal the truth behind the matter. Presenting Allison with a tape of Ben and Colin's conversation about the motel, I watched as her expression shifted from curiosity to disbelief. Despite her protestations, I pressed on, assuring her that I trusted her implicitly. Detailing my suspicions regarding Colin's fabricated story and subsequent investigation, I attempted to assuage Allison's doubts. However, her anger and apprehension persisted until I disclosed the identity of the woman visiting Colin in the motel room, Bill's wife, Naomi. My revelation stunned Allison, prompting her to question my trust in her. Addressing her concerns, I explained my motives and apologized for any doubt cast upon her. Though hesitant, Allison accepted my explanation, and we returned to work. Later that evening, amidst the tranquility of home, Allison revealed Bill's contemplation over Naomi's transgressions and sought my counsel. Offering advice on forgiveness and reconciliation, I comforted her, mindful of the fragility of trust. In a surprising turn, Allison shared Bill's offer of a vice presidency in the corporation's investigations division. Overwhelmed with joy, she enveloped me in a tight embrace, elated by the prospect of our future together. Reflecting on the past week's trials, we reaffirmed our unwavering commitment to each other, resolved to weather any storm that may come our way. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.